Hi guys, today's lesson is about conjugation of regular verbs in the present tense. So last lesson we talked a little bit about what conjugation is, which is adding a performer and a sense of time to a verb. We also talked about personal pronouns, which are kind of the performer, and we talked about I can't remember what else we talked about. So let's get started. So the three types of conjugation that I'm teaching are AR, ER, and IR. Those types of verbs, which are the three types of verbs. So let's start with AR conjugation. And the example I'm giving is nadar. So with yo, what you do is you tag off the AR and you add no. So that would make it nado, which means I swim. Nadar means to swim. Next is the tu form, which means you. You would tack off the R and then add an S. So that would make it nadas, which means you swim. Next is él, ella, y usted. You would take off the R on that to make it nada, which means he, she, or you formal swim. Next we have nosotros. We would take off the R and then add mos to make it nadamos, which means we swim. Next we have ellos, ellas, y ustedes. What we do is we take off the R and add an N to make it nadan, which means they, a group of men, they, a group of women, or y'all, formal, you all formal, swim. Next we have ER conjugation. And the verb I'm using is leer, which means to swim. So for yo, we take off the ER this time, because it's an ER verb, and we add an O to make it leo. For the tu, we take off the R and add an S to make it lis. For the él, ella, y usted, we take off the R and that's it, to make it li. For the nosotros, we take off the R and add limos. For the ellos, ellas, y ustedes, we take off the R and just add an N to make it lean. So each one of these meanings. Yo would be I read. Tu would be you read. Él, ella, y usted would be he, she, or you formal reads. Nosotros would be we read. Ellos, ellas, y ustedes would be they, or you all formal read. So next is IR conjugation, and the verb I'm using is abrir, which means to open. Abrir, sorry, I didn't pronounce it there right. So the first is yo, and you would think, yo is it's very regular. You take off the IR and add no to make it abro. Now here's where it gets slightly different. For the tu form, we take off the IR and then add an ES. You would normally think that it would be IS, but for IR verbs, you do the endings of the ER verbs. They're similar in a lot of verb conjugations. For the él, ella, y usted, we take off the IR and add an E, just like ER verbs. Abrir. Nosotros is one of the cases where it's the exact same as, it's where it keeps its forms as an IR verb. We take off the IR, add IMOS. Abrimos. Ellos, ellas, y ustedes, we take off the IR and add an EN, just like ER verbs, to make it abren. So here are some notes I have about conjugation in the present tense. So the first thing you need to notice is a trend in nosotros. So if you notice every time, well, if you notice just for IR verbs, you notice that it kept its original properties as an IR verb just then, imos. You didn't change it to ER. And that's something that you're going to notice a lot in as you go on conjugation in Spanish. Nosotros form is always going to be similar to the properties of the verb it takes. such as in IR verbs, it's always going to be the same, and in ER verbs, it's going to be the same, and in AR verbs, it's going to be the same. They're not going to switch around. Also, for verbs like stem-changing verbs, which are verbs that their conjugation, they're special verbs. You conjugate them a little bit differently because, like when we had nadar, NAD stayed the same the whole time, but in stem-changing verbs, NAD would be changed to something like NOD. That doesn't really happen, but that's an example. So in those, they're gonna be stem changing in all of the you will have stem changes in every single type sometimes, except in nosotros form. You will never have a stem change in the nosotros form. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that the present tense is not I am blanking, like I am swimming, I am running. It's I swim. That's something that a lot of people get messed up, and I want to clarify that because there's a special way to say I am whatever. There's a special way to say that. So not all verbs are conjugated this way. Some examples of these are ir, ser, and dormir. The ir is an example of a irregular verb, which means that it's not conjugated regularly. It's sort of stem changing. It's a type of stem changing. Ser is also one of these. Dormir is an example of a stem changing verb. So when you conjugate dormir, you do, I'll teach stem changing verbs later, but for dormir you do it's D-U-E-R-M-O for I sleep. Dormir means to sleep. I sleep would be D-U-E-R-M-O. So that's an example of a stem changing verb. So realize that not all verbs are going to have this type of conjugation, and you need to be able to recognize, and you're automatically not going to be able to know how to do this, but you need to learn how to do that. I hope you like this lesson. Please comment. 100 views, guys. That's all I need to make the new one. I guess I didn't really have 100 views last time, but just keep watching them and subscribe. Thanks.